Nice. Hello, welcome everybody. Good morning. Day 2 of our end of the year PD week. And I just want to reiterate how lucky we are to have this time. I'm talking with other school districts, and while other school districts people are getting furloughed and they aren't able to work on certain days and they're just running it right out to the end, having this time together is really important. We're very lucky to be able to be together during this week and just be here together. So super lucky to have this opportunity to be with you today. Yesterday we talked about general best practices for online learning. We talked about building relationships with students over a distance. We talked about creating clear expectations for students and making it easy for them to navigate our online classroom. We talked about alignment and being aligned with your team to make sure that we're doing the same thing at the same time to make it really predictable for our students and families. And then we talked about providing a variety of learning opportunities for students and using different tools to create a variety of creation and assessment during our online time together. So today what we're going to do is we're going to jump a little bit more specifically into how we do that with Seesaw. And this presentation was based off of a lot of the questions that I've received throughout this time. And what I did is I just wrote a whole bunch of those questions down and turned those into kind of best practices, tips, what to do. I ran it by several of our Seesaw experts in the district, and they gave some feedback on that. And then we made some slides, and we're going to kind of share with you some of the answers that we've come up with and what has been working well for teachers in LO. And as we go through these things, if there's something that you have experienced, feel free to put that into the chat, and so everyone can see what worked well for you. So that being said, I think let's get going. We can get the next slide. Great. So I think that the first thing that we need to know about Seesaw is that it is a portfolio platform, first and foremost. That's how it started out. And then they added parent communication features because parents should be able to see this too. So as we're using Seesaw, like in a face-to-face environment, there is no tool that is better at sharing student work and giving students a voice in reflecting on their work and immediately sharing that with parents and helping teachers share with families what's going on a day-to-day basis in their classroom. I know that the more we use Seesaw, the less emails we get from parents in a face-to-face environment because they feel more connected with what's happening in the classroom. And for those of you who've been using Seesaw for a while, you know that's true. For those of you who are just getting started with Seesaw, that's something that you're going to find that the more connected your parents feel, the less they're going to be like needing to reach out and connect and ask questions because they feel like they're part of the classroom. So really, this tool will be so beneficial when we get back face to face to create a consistent K-5 communication platform for our whole school and to make sure that students are capturing their learning and reflecting on their learning all year long in a portfolio that follows them from year to year. So it's just an amazing tool for that. But when it comes to distance learning, it's lacking some of those features that maybe a full learning management system might have. So, Seesaw admits, they're like, yeah, this is not what the tool was made for. So we're kind of stretching this platform to fit this distance learning model, even though there are some great benefits, like a huge library of pre-made resources that we were able to just grab and just send out there at a moment's notice. Like that was a very quick turnaround and we did really well. But some of the things are difficult, like organizing the activity feed. Like that's a really difficult thing that some other tools might be a little bit better at. So today we're going to talk about how to use those things well and how to kind of overcome some of those shortcomings of the tool. Next slide. So right now, our innovation facilitators who have been your Seesaw administrators, and they've been doing an amazing job, and hats off to them. They have done incredible things with this platform for you. If they've been in charge of everything, it's incredible. Anyway, to cut ties and say like, hey, we're done with this year. They have gone through and they have archived your classes from this year. But in order to start working and try some of the things that we're going to be doing today later on your own time, what you're going to need to do is probably go back into Seesaw and just start like a demo class, because you don't have access to any of your library or any of the activity creation tools or anything if you don't have a class. So the recommendation is to go back into Seesaw and just start a demo class so that over the summer you can do some work, you can create some lessons, you can just get hands-on with some of these features and practice some of it, which is actually a really good thing to do. So it won't be connected to any parents or students. You'll get a sample student in there that you can mess around with, but just go in and create a demo class, and that will help you during this summer or to kind of get ready for next year if you wanted to do some lesson creation. Your classes will be created for you next summer. Oh, if we can go back, thanks. Your classes will be created for you automatically next year for your homerooms. So stay tuned for that. And just one other note about classes being archived. We got some poor intel from Seesaw. Some of you had tried to send out announcements to parents about like, here's some resources for the summer. And when classes got archived, it seems like some of those messages did not get received, or that they went away when the classes got archived. So don't be surprised if you hear from your parents that they wanted to, they're like, hey, the message that you sent is gone. So you might need to just send it old school, just send them an email, or if you wanted to, you could unarchive your class and just send that announcement again. That's fine. If you need help with this, please contact your innovation facilitator. We just wanted to let you know that that was happening so you aren't surprised by that. All right, let's keep going.
Okay.
So I think that before I hand it over to Ashley, I think the biggest thing that we had to that was probably an issue when it came to Seesaw was confusion about what posts do what and when to use them. And I think that if we are smarter about how we use our posts and what we use our posts for, that we can really solve a lot of those issues that we were having with the platform. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ashley, and she's going to tell you more about that.
All right. Hi, everyone. Okay, so kind of just breaking down ways to share and post things to students. This is where I heard a lot of confusion, like Chris was saying too. So one way to just share something out to students would be posting to their journal. They can comment back on it, and anyone who's tagged in the post can see that, and I'll go deeper into each of these in a minute. So here's a quick overview. If you think about whether you need or want students to respond and the answer is no, then you can send it as an announcement. And we'll go deeper in that in a second. And then activities that we're all familiar with now, but that would be that you would like students to respond. And then they would press add response, and whether you used a template or anything for that, it'd go from there. So we're gonna go a little bit deeper into each one of these, and I'm gonna give you some examples of how you can use them. So starting with posting to a student's journal. So you would you get all those 6 different options of what you'd want to post. You would tag only the student or students that you'd want to send it to at a time. And something to keep in mind that all comments can be seen by anyone that's tagged in the post. Some examples of how I've seen this used is a video message for feedback, or a note for feedback, a link to a small group like Google Meet. And so then anybody who's linked on that can see any of those comments too. So if there's more than one student, keep that in mind. Also a video or a note just checking in with students, posting it to their journal page. Really nice thing is that you can see who has viewed the post. It'll say seen by and have the names of the people who've seen the post, students or parents that have seen it. And something to keep in mind though, that this cannot be scheduled in advance like activities can. So this is a great way if you want students maybe the opportunity to be able to comment back on it, but really they don't need to respond like an activity. You can do that. Another big question that we've gotten is, how can students contact a teacher? And so that would also be that students would be posting to their journal. So they would just be on the journal page, press that plus add, and do a photo or a video or a drawing, a note, whatever it is, and contact the teacher and asking them for help or checking in, communicating back to them to tell them that they need or would like something.
I think the confusion in posting to the journal comes in that we think that student student journal as a place where the students post things, but we just forget that teachers can also post to the student journal. It's a really great way to get a post in front of a student because it's right in their feed. Parents can see anything that's posted into that student journal. So using it as a communication tool, not just a portfolio piece, but I think that we just have a preconception that it's just a part of the portfolio and it's not a valid way to communicate, but we should be using it to communicate.
Yeah, definitely. And it'll say like Mrs. Spear posted to so-and-so's journal. It'll say who posted that. All right, so moving over to announcements. So reminder that announcements are a way to communicate where students do not need to respond. You can send announcements to all your students, to all your family members, or to both, all students and all family members, or you could select certain family members to message with. So something to keep in mind is that students cannot respond to announcements, and family members can respond to announcements, but they can only respond once you've sent an initial message. So it'll show up on the class side of Seesaw for families to see messages, and then they can reply in a two-way conversation with just this parent, family member, and the teacher through announcements. It's through their inbox is what it would be called. Something to keep in mind, it's like student families. You can check it out on the chat. But I think when you're looking at there, you can either select all the students in the class, all the family members, or students and family members.
Yes, I think a confusing thing about announcements is that that you cannot select individual students. Am I correct in this, Ashley?
Yes, so since you cannot do individual students, that's why posting to the journal is the best way to connect it to just to certain students. So it'd be for the whole class. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Thanks. Okay, so some examples that I've seen with this and used would be a daily or weekly calendar, what the activities what the activities would be for that day or that week, a morning message. So like good morning and kind of going over those. If you want to get really fancy, you could combine those two and have a checklist with an embedded video with your morning message on there. Link to your class Zoom or Meet, different like videos or tutorials, class photos or videos, any kind of lesson or a reteaching where you wouldn't need the student to respond, but you want them to have that video to be able to look at. You can also see who's viewed this, either students or family members, depending on who all you sent it to. Another thing, though, that these cannot be scheduled in advance yet. So I think that's something that might be coming in the works. It's not on the agenda now, but cannot schedule announcements in advance like you can with activities.
So I think when it comes to announcements, I found that a lot of teachers are using just activities so much. They aren't using the journal posting, and they aren't using announcements maybe as much as they could. And so by using announcements, you can really cut down the clutter in your activity feed. That not everything has to be an activity, and not everything needs a student response. Sometimes you just need to communicate some things out. So yeah, like Ashley was saying, with the daily or weekly calendar, sending out like a Bitmoji classroom for here's the links that we're going to explore this week. But it doesn't necessarily like need a student response. It's just like welcome message that we should be using announcements more to be keeping students and families on the same page. So by doing that, it helps in two ways. One, it just like gets the announcements out to families directly. And two, it really reduces the clutter in your activity feed. Which also means that you don't have to respond to as many posts.
Yeah, not having to approve so many posts. Yeah. So, and the nice thing is too that you still can know who has seen it. I mean, who knows how deeply they've seen it and watched it, but you know who has seen it, but then don't need that response to go through and say done or whatever they're responding to. All right, so next thing is activities. I know you guys are all doing awesome with activities. Just kind of to clarify, finding and using activities, we are Seesaw for Schools now, so we have that school and district library, and I'll talk more about kind of that in a second. You have your library. Remember to put that heart on anything that you find, whether in the community library or in the school or district library, to save it to your library. So heart it first, and then copy and edit it to make it just right, to add your own voice and your own kind of extra details or anything that you wanted on it. Reminder that activities can be scheduled in advance, like long time in advance. So if you see something that you want coming up, then you can schedule that out. Another thing, so kind of keeping about with activities, it has been so cool to see how teams are sharing activities with each other within their team across the district. So whether that's sharing it to the district and school library, you just press those 3 dots, press share activity. You can email it or get that activity link and then copying it into a shared document. It's been really neat talking with teams and seeing how they use a shared document. I just have an example here of a working document for the upcoming week, and kind of everyone's putting in their different links, and then they can copy those or save them to their library, copy and edit it, add their own voices to it or videos.
Yeah. Yesterday, we talked a lot about how people were using Google Docs to align with their teams and how they were sharing Seesaw activities with links to a document just like this, and I think that was just a huge benefit. I know one of the shortcomings of Seesaw is that you can create collections to organize your activities, but you can't share those collections with a group. I think that would really help a lot of our collaboration. But for now, just like creating a document like that, sharing the activity with the link, and then just posting it into that document so everyone has that same activity that they can use. I think that's a really best practice that we should be doing.
Yeah. And so you can take this same document that your team was using as a working document for that week, kind of clean it up a little bit, and that's your announcement for, that you're sending out on Mondays or for that day too. Okay, so a little bit more about creating activities. We're talking with our other Seesaw experts in the district and kind of wanting to think about how we could title activities to be useful for everybody to be able to use. So kind of coming up with an idea was that you put the subject or title with it, or title or topic, have your grade level, and then what school it's for or what school you are at. And then when you copy it and edit it, then you can put your own information in there too. So kind of just wanting to streamline that a little bit. So if you've done some amazing Seesaw activity, you can share it to the district library of, let's say it was kindergarten geometry or whatever it is, and then somebody else can search for it and be able to find it in there too. All right, so also kind of moving down the line here with creating activities, reminder about using icons to help with your instructions. So I have the link there, or a short URL in there too to access this document, but you can just code those in the instructions. Awesome to have those visuals in there for students, especially for K2. And then going along with that is adding voice instructions. So get that personal touch on there. They love hearing your voice, seeing your face, all those things. So add voice instructions on your activities.
And I think that these two things, especially using icons and using the voice instructions, is just like universal good design, right? It's just visuals and audio are helpful for everybody. And I know that previously, if you've attended our Wednesday workshops, we talked about putting icons into the activities. Yes, I was just going to do that, Robin. I will definitely post that. And in fact, I'm going to post a checklist that kind of talks about everything that we are doing here, plus links to extra videos on how to do some of this stuff. So I'm going to pop that into the chat, and including the little tags on the icons. And when you're doing the icons, it's just little it's like the little bracket, and then you're like draw, and then bracket right in the, and then that pops it up. So I will pop those documents into the chat so that everyone can see that again. So let me bring those up. give me a second, but Ashley can keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so adding those voice instructions. And then when you're going to the add multimedia instructions or examples, it has those same 6 options, just like announcements did. And so the 3 main ones, if you're going to do a video, the 3 main ones I recommend is if yours is going to be less than 5 minutes, just do the video straight into Seesaw. So you just click the video icon. If it's a little bit longer than that, then you might want to save it to your Google Drive, update those share settings, and then, or actually you can just upload it from Google Drive. And then that it's only 500 megabytes, I think is what the maximum is if you're uploading. So then if it's even longer than that, that's when you want to add the link. So then you would update the share settings and say anyone with the link can view, and then add the link in there for your video. Also, you could, if you don't need the video, you could add a photo, and then they add different things on that. Photo will take you into that drawing page where you can have up to 20 pages. So that's something to keep in mind. Same thing with adding the template for student response. You get those same 6 options. You can have up to 20 pages. Oh, oops, I think I said that the wrong way. Multimedia instructions, you can still have those, but for the template for student response, they can add up to 20 pages, or you can have those 20 pages ready for them. The top 4 that I really recommend for students to respond to is a photo, the drawing, upload, or note. So kind of depending on what you want students to respond to, those are the ones that you're going to be using the most. If you open up drawing, you will be able to still add photos on that drawing. You could still be able to upload from drawing. So drawing is kind of your go-to spot for the student response because you can still upload from there. Note would be just like a lined paper. So if you have a template and you want it to be a note, it might be a question where they then just like type out a response. But in drawing, you can still type something and then they could even circle a response. So you have a little bit more variety when you're doing drawing. Also, you can add voice instructions as either captions or with the microphone for each page of the template. I'm not going to go too in depth with that because that's going to be changing a little bit with the new Seesaw features coming out, which takes me to those new Seesaw features. We're really excited coming later this month. Students will be able to have videos on that canvas, so on the drawing. Right now, if they press drawing, they cannot do a video. We can also have videos on multiple pages in the drawings, which is awesome. Also, if you've been doing like a doc or a slide just to have multiple links when you added it as multimedia instructions or examples, you can now do that straight into Seesaw. Or you will be able to do that straight into Seesaw, which will be really nice. So instead of having to create a doc or a slide just to have multiple links, this makes, like if you think of your choice, if you've done choice boards, you'll be able to create that right in Seesaw. And I think there was one other thing. Oh, and then, yeah, having the multiple recordings that are coming up too. So a lot more options directly in Seesaw that are going to be coming out. They said mid-June, so I'm not sure.
Exactly. Yeah, these were a lot of the pain points and a lot of the things we were trying to figure out, like how do you work around. Seesaw is really great for prepackaged, like here's one link, here's one video, here's one template, you know, and but it just wasn't rich enough, so people were kind of doing workarounds by like creating Google Slides and then embedding lots of stuff and like but now with these new features coming out, you can put a video of yourself on one page and then put a student problem on the next page and then put another video of yourself on, or you could do choice boards and put multiple links on so students can just right from within Seesaw just start clicking on links. I'm really excited about these things. And another thing about these new features are that Seesaw is listening. You know, like they know that this was a weak spot, and so they are listening. They've also added an admin messaging feature, and this is not really for you, but for your principals, so that principals could actually message families and message students and message teachers. So they're listening and they're working to make this platform better because they know that they fell short on a couple of things. So I'm really excited about these lesson creation tools. I think it'll save us a lot of work if we have to go back into this mode. And I think it'll just be a nice way to run classes, even if we're face to face. These activity creation tools. Like think about creating a center in your classroom. Like just make a Seesaw activity and then the kids can do that as a center while you're working with another group too. So lots of really cool ways to use these new features.
Yeah. So kind of recapping with creating activities so far, if you're sharing it to the district library, include the subject, title, grade, and then your school if you want to include that, just so then other people can find it easier and kind of, be able to share the wealth there. Also, adding those icons, and I know Chris put that in the chat in your instructions. Reminder that you have those 6 options, whether you're adding it's for the multimedia instructions or examples, or for the template for student response. You get those 6 different ways that you can show it on there. All right, so kind of switching gears here, or I guess reviewing, let's see a little bit. Reviewing kind of what we've been talking about. Posting the student journal is a great way to give feedback to an individual student and a way to message and communicate with just a student or a small group of students. Same with how students can message you, and we can keep kind of training students. That's the best way to contact teacher when we're in distant learning like this. Announcements, or when to send your daily message or something, a video that you don't need students to respond to. That could be your Bitmoji classroom if you don't need that response from students. And then activities, as you all know, it's where the students have the opportunity to add a response.
But just so important to make sure that we are really using the right type of posts at the right times, no matter if it's activities or announcements, but that will solve a lot of our communication barriers and a lot of our clutter in our classrooms.
Definitely, yeah, and make it easier for all of us instead of having to go through extra things to approve that don't need a response. All right, so let's talk a little bit more, or a little bit about how to stay organized in Seesaw. Chris mentioned the word collections before, and you may have seen this in your activity library, but this is a way to keep your activities organized. So we can each have up to 100 collections of a way to keep your activities organized. So some of the things, this is an old picture of mine, but so beginning of the year. So some of those introducing each other, kind of getting to know each other ones. You could have different literacy like strands, a collection for each of those. So when you find or create activities, you're putting them in these collections. Same with math. Think about the different math units that you teach. So that would be like if you have a geometry collection. So when you're searching geometry, you can just heart it and put it in those collections in there.
Yeah. So when your class has been archived, your library is still available, but you need a class in order to access your library. And so that's why we were saying go in and start that just demo class over the summer, and then you can get into your library. But yeah, your library is always there. You just need to be able to get into the library from a class. So start a demo class, then you can get to your library and all your collections will still be there.
Yep. So something to think about for collections, when you think about how you've organized maybe your Google Drive, we would call those a folder. So it's like that same kind of a thing, but they're called collections in Seesaw because folders are something else we'll talk about in a minute. And once you have these though, and I think the question was, can you have like a subfolder or a sub collection? And it's just those 100 collections that you can have. So once I would say if you're wanting to really organize it, be specific with how you are, because you get 100 of them. And if you think about the different strands or topics, you can be pretty specific on how you're organizing the different collections. Also, then it's in alphabetical order. So once you go to your activity library, you'll have the most recently used ones kind of up at the top. And then scrolling down, once you're in My Library, you'll see all your collections down at the bottom here. And then if there's any that are not shown, that it'll say activities not in a collection, and it'll have them below your collections.
Ashley, there was a comment in the chat. It was a question on, and we're getting it answered right now in the chat. But the question was, there are a couple of like power users on Seesaw who are creating amazing activities for their activity libraries. And so the question was, how do you search for somebody who is like a favorite teacher of yours that you want to just keep looking at their stuff? And so Nikki thank you for adding that, said just click add and then assign activity and then click community. And then from the community, I think you just type in the name of the person. And then that will take you to show you a bunch of the activities created by that person.
Yes, yeah. If you click on that person, it'll show all the ones that have been published in Seesaw. Seesaw has not been accepting any additions for their community library the last few months during all this. But I think they're starting to open that up over the next month or so. So it may not be any super new posts in that community library, but definitely check it out. Search for somebody, and then you can always go back and search for that person too and click on their name, and it'll show all their ones that they've published in the community library. So Seesaw has somebody, like an actual person that's going through all the submissions to check them out and make sure it's something valuable for other teachers. Okay, so collections are in your activity library, and then folders are a way to organize in your class. So kind of thinking separately from now, you're back in your class feed where students have responded, you have your activities assigned. Folders are a way to stay organized. You can make a folder for each subject. You can even add an emoji. So like on the example here, it has a little pencil, and then that's the writing one. Specialists can have folders also. So maybe ELL has a folder within the homeroom for the students that they're working with. Posts can also be put in more than one folder. And so an example of a way that I might use this is for conferences. So we've gone through, done a bunch of different activities so far, and conferences are coming up. I might have students go back through and say, okay, let's pick your 3 favorite ones or your 5 favorite posts that you want to share with families at conferences. So then they can press the 3 dots, say edit posts, and then edit folders, and be able to say add to the fall conference folder, and or put whatever emoji there, the smiley face emoji, and say that they want to edit that. So then everyone can go through and add the ones that they want for fall conferences. I'm hearing a lot from classroom teachers that they haven't been using folders that much, and you can do however it works for you. As a specialist, folders have been amazing because we can go through and respond by looking just at the folders. So saying if I want to look at just their writing assignments right now, like I'm in the writing mode, I want to do my assessments on writing, I can then go through and just look at writing and by folder and be able to see all their writing assignments and go through my grade book and be able to look at that. Same thing. So you can kind of, whether that's a way to approve posts, and I'll talk about that too, but then a way to go back and look at different posts would be by folder.
We had a question in the chat. Can we put a folder inside a folder? My gut reaction to that is no, but I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, okay. I think that had to do with the collections. And so I think, well, the answer is unfortunately no on either one, the collections or the folders. Yeah. So folders is a way to stay organized. The nice thing about folders is it's an assignment. So let's say you had them do a main idea and detail assignment. When you assigned that in the activity, in activities, you would add the folder then, and then you can go back through and say, okay, where are we at on main idea and detail? If that's what your folder was, or whatever concept it is. And then being able to go through and say, okay, well, I need to reteach for these 3 kids on this part because you've gone through and checked it out from the looking back on the folder. Reminder though, so assigning the activity, you would say edit students, folders, and skills, and then click folders, and then click on the folder that you want to add it to before assigning the activity. If you miss this part, going back to edit each one of them takes a long time, and it's probably not worth it unless you're wanting to like gather data in a different way. So definitely recommend assigning the activity and adding it to a folder then.
Yeah, folders can be really helpful for not only just like conferences, like looking back, but think about the power of this portfolio tool. Like as we're looking at maybe students who might need some special support, or students who you're looking at like an IEP for a student, or if they need to be assessed, or need any kind of like data or work samples for a student. just think about how do we collect the data and how do we use this tool that we're already using to help us organize the data that can help us tell a story about the kind of support that a student needs or the kind of progress that a student is making. So, this is more than just a portfolio. It's more than just parent communication. It's more than just giving activities out. Like, how can we leverage this tool for the stuff that we're already doing, like conferences, like assessments? So just really think about that and the power that we have available to us right now.
Yeah. Another thing about staying organized would be archiving activities. So after you're no longer accepting responses, maybe after a week or two, to go through and archive the activity. So you just press the 3 dots in the activity feed, 3 dots on the activity, and say archive activity. I recommend that if you have an activity that repeats every week, like weekend news or reading fluency, math fact practice, whatever it is that you want the students to respond to every week, archive the old one and repost it every week. Because otherwise it's going to be harder for students to find if they have to go back through and say respond again versus, oh, I haven't done it this week, and say add response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that this was kind of a topic of contention because people were like, well, we weren't really sure in which mode we were at. Like, do we leave activities around to let students catch up and to complete them, or do we just archive them and say, hey, we're just moving on? Because once you archive the activities, then the students don't have access to it, so they can't like catch up and finish up like an old activity that they've been working on. And a lot of this, I think, will have to kind of come from admin as to, like, are we wanting kids to catch up on old assignments and make sure that we're doing all the assignments, or are we just moving on and saying, hey, just do what you can? But I think a lot of that was just because we didn't have some clarity about that, and we kept changing the mode that we were in. But I think that archiving every like 2 weeks or so will kind of help keep your students' activity feed a little bit cleaner, and just letting go of those old assignments and keep moving on. That was a really nice tip and helped people. And Sarah says you can reassign an activity for a specific kid. That's a great idea, Sarah. Mm-hmm. So if there was one student who needed to catch up, gosh, that's such a good idea, then you can just go back to your activity library, reassign it, and only assign it to that one student. And then that'll go into their activity feed, but clean it up for the rest of your students. Oh, it's such a great idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. Okay, so then another way to stay organized is thinking about ways to check unapproved posts. So, you can always go to the journal page and say review, and then go through, and that's any post, and it's by time. So the most recently submitted at the top and kind of going down at the bottom. You could always review and check unapproved posts by the activity. I find that it takes longer to kind of click through them. But if you're really wanting to respond on the activity, then that might be the best way. Or you could respond by folder. So you would go to the unapproved post at the bottom, then click that folder icon, and then click which folder you want to check with, and then go through there. So how I do it is I'll check the folder and then go through and comment as I go, and then at the bottom say approve all after I've had a chance to comment on all of them. You can kind of think about, though, that's if you're wanting to approve by folder, and that's if you're using the folders, if that's what works for you. So those are just the 3 different ways to check unapproved posts as you're going through there.
And I think it can be a little bit confusing because the review button looks very similar, and depending on where you are, you can be, if you're in the journal and you hit the review button, then you're going to be reviewing like all of the things in the whole journal. But if you click on the activities button and you're going to review it, then you're going to just review by the activity. But if you click on the folder and review all, then it's going to be reviewing all in the folder. And so it can be a little bit confusing, but you can also use that to your advantage to really like bulk approve some of these posts that you were looking at.
Yeah, definitely. So as you're approving them, you're also wanting to give feedback, I'm sure. So we talked about maybe giving a video message for feedback on their post separately, but other ways to do it on their actual post or on their journal separately. But on their actual post, there's the like button that we all know. Comment, you could leave voice comments. Once you click comment, you can do the microphone for voice comments. You could edit the post. So if you press the 3 dots and say edit the post, then you can add your own little sticker or emoji, Bitmoji on there to then say like, great idea or good work, and then do the green check from there after you've done that. You could also, if you don't approve it, you could send it back and add a comment before you send back. And that puts it in the draft mode for students to say, oh, I noticed you missed number 4. Go back and let's look at this one or whatever it is, and then send it back. So then when they log in the next time on their journal feed, they'll see it kind of yellowish orange around it, and it'll say draft where they can edit it there. You can also, thanks Carrie, when you press edit, you can go through and mark it up and circle different ones and then add your voice comment or add your comment to have that on there too.
I think what I like about some of these, like the liking and the voice comment and liking and comments and voice comments, just like right there in the post, you know, like you just click like, you know, we want to do a little bit deeper than that. So comment is great, but the voice comment is so easy to do and it saves us time and it saves us keystrokes. So watch out for that carpal tunnel. So be sure that you're using those things. And then like editing the post, yes, if you click it and edit the post, you can add stickers, add some personalization to it, markup, like everyone was saying, just being, you know, circling things. And I just think that these are just great ways to do this. And we should be doing more than just liking posts. We can do more.
Yeah. So there's also an option to do keyboard shortcuts. That would be a scripted comment on there. So maybe you have your own personal comment that you added, and then you wanted a scripted comment that you're going to send to the whole class that day, saying something like, remember to read 20 minutes of your Just Right book, or remember tomorrow is our meeting at 9 a.m., whatever it is. If you want some type of a scripted comment and you don't want to have to type it every time, you can go to System Preferences if you have a Mac. I'm not sure how this would work on a Dell, but on a Mac, you can go to System Preferences, go to Keyboard, and then add a keyboard shortcut on there. So like an example I did was like semicolon 2. So if I press semicolon 2, then that's going to be my comment, my scripted comment to students after my personalized comment that I would type.
I posted the link again to our best practices document that you can, is kind of the summary. And so down towards the bottom under the feedback section, I did post a little 4-minute video on how to do this. So screenshots are nice, but there's a little video if you would like to watch how to create little text shortcuts. So when you type something, it'll just like, there's your kind of pre-made comment that you can quickly run through. So check that out. Voice comment only appearing on my iPad, not my laptop, might be a permission setting with your browser. Ashley, have you been able to do voice comments on browser?
I have. If it's when you click, you actually almost, it looks like you're ready to type into it, and then the microphone shows up for voice comments on the computer is what I'm noticing. So you can try that and see, because I have to like click comment and then like it looks like I'm ready to type, but then click the microphone from there. But I've found though that using my browser on my iPad, the voice comments was not working. I needed to use the app on my iPad. And I don't know if that was a fluke or what, but.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention about ways to give feedback. So we talked about approving, sending back, but then also sometimes deleting. It happens where something is not appropriate or it's not what they should be posting. So usually what would happen with this is I would press delete, and then that's when I would post to the student's journal. So I've either done it as a note or even a video just saying like, hey, I noticed that you sent this. I'd love to hear more about it. Or I noticed that you sent this and this was not appropriate. So making sure not to just delete and then kids are like, I posted that, I don't know what happened, but giving them that feedback in that way too.
Yeah, I think it's really important, because if you hit the delete button, then their post just gets deleted. and they're like, oh, it's just gone. Like, why did that get deleted? So I think if you're going to delete, it's nice to just give a little bit of feedback on like, hey, I deleted your post and this is what I want. Can you try it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing too is checking journal by calendar view. This is not a way to check unapproved posts. This would just to be to see how many posts were added on different days of the week. So you can see this example. So like on Saturday, May 9th, there was one item added. This would, and then you can click it and see what that one item added was. The thing though about this is that means that you approved those items to be added on that day. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was that the students added it on this day. Because I was really curious about how many students were doing their work on the weekends versus like if they waited and did, all however many posts on the weekends versus during the week. But I was finding that it was only when then I approved it. So it really, that doesn't give you that data, but you can use it in other ways if that's beneficial for you.
Yeah, it's a little bit misleading, and that's what I thought too. Initially, I was like, oh, or you could just like go and approve it by calendar, but that's not how that works apparently. So
it'll just show you what's been posted or how many items, and then if you click on it, what has been posted on those days.
Yes. Let's see here. There was a let's see what the next slide is.
Okay.
There's a couple of questions I want to make sure we get to.
So here's our last little bit for here. And it's when in doubt, write it out. And it seems like sometimes it's hard for students to write, even if like on an iPad, using their little finger, or even if they have a stylus on an iPad. If that's the case, encourage them to write it on paper, use their pencil, take a picture of it and upload it. Sometimes it's even better for you as a teacher to be able to approve it and be able by seeing it and seeing where they're at if they take a picture of it. Reminding them though, like make sure it's a clear picture. I know they're young children, but yeah, being able to take a picture and seeing it versus trying to write it on a little screen sometimes can be difficult.
Yeah, I think this was if you listen to the student panel, I think that this was one of the frustrations with digital learning, like just in general. So the students kept repeating, like, it was really hard for me to do math on Seesaw. And I think it's just really hard to do math on a computer in general. So like if we were using Google Classroom or Canvas or any other LMS, it would be difficult to do math on it. It's difficult to write on a trackpad. It's difficult to write on a screen. So writing on paper and taking a picture is probably the best way to do it. But then the problem is that you have this picture that might not be of high quality. So maybe you work out something with your students being like, okay, so take a picture of the whole page so that I can see that you did the page. And then I'd like you to add, I would like you to add a separate page and do one problem really big. Like just like take a separate piece of paper, do one problem really big, and then you can upload a picture of that so I can see it. Additionally, if they record their voice while they're about and talk through the problem, that might help you understand some of the little glitches in the handwriting or in stuff that you're seeing or the image quality. It's difficult. There is no great way to do it. It is a challenge no matter what platform we have. So it's not really a shortcoming of Seesaw. It's just, it is hard to do handwritten work in a digital setting. So that's where I think that Seesaw actually has an advantage, because it's much easier to add pictures to Seesaw than it is to add pictures into like Google Classroom and some of the other things, for especially for students, because they have it right there. So that was one of the biggest feedback, I think, from students. So we need to come up with a system and an understanding, and they need to be able to practice this stuff. Don't expect that students are able to take good pictures right away. Don't expect that students are going to be able to do these things right away. So start out with some smaller assignments and say like, hey, I'd like you to do this. This is, try this, and then try making a big problem, and start with some low consequence assignments before you get serious. So I'm just blabbering now.
No, I think that I totally agree, Chris. And like, I know pictures cannot, or sometimes not always clear. So maybe that is that like, hey, I want to see number 3 and 7 on page, or like on the next 2 pages. And they're a little more clear and talking it out. So it could be valuable that way.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was another question about the blog. Do we have a minute, Chris? Can we talk
Yeah,
about
we
that?
totally have a minute because I
Okay.
think we're pretty much getting to the end here
Yeah.
of some of the stuff that we had planned. But this is great. We actually had a slide for the blog and we're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't talk about it, but let's talk about it.
Okay, so the Seesaw blog feature, if you're not familiar with the blog, it's automatically disabled. So you would have to go in and enable the blog. It is a like public on the web website where those same kind of posts that students are posting in their journals could also be posted to the blog. So this would mean that anybody with access to the blog could see those posts. It could be, though, that you can add a password to make it password protected to the blog. And then you can also enable or disable comments to the blog. And students' first names are only posted on the blog, so you wouldn't see any last names. A couple of things about the blog. It is a way to have an authentic audience, or for students to see each other's work. Since they're not seeing each other's work in Seesaw, it is a way that they could see each other's work on the blog. You get to control what's been posted to the blog. I know that this is a big management thing because students can just go through and start adding things to the blog or commenting on the blog. So it could be that you have hundreds of comments or posts waiting on the blog. So depending on you, if this is something that you want to manage, the blog is definitely an option. I do think it is a great way to create classroom community, especially in distance learning when they're not able to see each other's work. Maybe there's some really like exemplar examples that you want to share with other students. Then that, like, to kind of up the game of everybody, like that could be a way to do it, is through the blog. It does take a lot of management, though, of just being able to teach students how to, I'm sure they can figure it out actually pretty fast, upload to the blog, but then managing those posts.
And Ashley, I think that we were talking about this when we were planning the session. And with the blog, if you turn it on whenever a student posts to the blog, that's also another post that you have to approve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the kids would kind of go nuts. So if you're gonna do this, like, be ready for a lot more posts coming in, because the kids are going to want to be posting to the blog to see each other's work.
Yeah. Definitely. And it looks like someone added to the chat. Yeah, you can edit it. So if you edit everybody, or edit people and you say everybody, then it would be posted to everybody's post too. So another way to show that.
Yeah. There was another question. Lisa asked, when we were talking about the giving feedback to students, and we were talking about like voice comments onto their work, she asked, is there a way that you can edit the student's work and, like, I'm guessing annotate it? I think that this is what she was asking, like to annotate and draw over their work while you are speaking.
The way to do that would be, it wouldn't be as a comment. It would be using the microphone feature. So if they've already done a microphone, like speaking part in their lesson, you would have to re-record that, and it would take away their microphone, like their speaking part. So you could go in and say edit post. You could tap the microphone and then start talking. And when you're in the microphone and you're talking, all those parts are movable. You could be typing in the post. You could be using that little arrow to point to, or cursor to kind of point to things. So all those things are active with the microphone. So I would just be careful that you're not taking away part of what you want the student's post to be.
Yeah, so let me see if I got that clear. If I wanted to, I could click the three dots and I could edit the post. And once I'm in the edit mode, all of the drawing features and the microphone features and all of that is available to me. So I could annotate and draw, create a recording, circle things, give feedback that way on the post. But because you can only have one audio recording on the post at a time, it would overwrite what the students had recorded. Yes. And so we have to be careful about that.
And Carrie just said, thank you, Carrie, duplicate that post first and then go back and do it. So you're not changing anything on their work. So awesome. That's such a great idea.
Brilliant.
Duplicate it. Yep. Duplicate it. Their post stays the same. And then you're doing your little reteach or your feedback on a separate page.
So the duplicate, that's just in three dots, duplicate post, and then you can edit. And then when you submit,
sorry to cut you off, but I would actually say to duplicate the page, not the post. So you're already in edit. you already in edit, all the pages are on the side. So the 3 little dots on that one little page, then duplicate it from there. So I would just, I'm assuming that's what Carrie was saying, and that's how I was explaining it. Yeah, edit within inside of it.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Is there anything else?
Other questions on here. I simply edit people if I want everyone to see a post before I approve it. So, oh yeah, chat just blew up, so I'm trying to catch up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to know that if you wanted to share posts with everyone so that everyone can see, you can take any post and then just edit people. And when you edit people, you can click all students. And then when you approve that post, then it'll show up in everybody's journal. So again, using that journal as a communication tool and being able to open up posts so that everybody can see. So you probably don't want every post to be viewable by everybody, but if there is a project where like you want students to see each other's work and they're okay with it, you can just edit people and then just just tag everybody, and everybody will be able to see the posts. What else is going on? I'm worried I'm going to forget this if I'm not using it right away. I will be, yes. So we are recording this, and so we can play it again. I'm going to paste those are the notes for the session with videos on how to do this stuff. So you can click on that document, and that'll be there. I am sure that going into the beginning of the year, we'll have a refresher on this, especially talking about the new features in Seesaw and how to use them. So, but yes, we don't want this to be overwhelming. I know we threw a lot at you, but we were really just trying to address the most common problems that we saw this year. So hopefully a lot of this wasn't too new to you, but maybe just getting you to rethink the tools that we already have and how we're using them. That being said, yes, we are here to help you. We love questions. Questions all help us learn and grow more. And this, like I said, all of this was based off of people's questions and stuff we heard about this year. So please let us know how it can help you. We have experts in the district. We have so many Seesaw ambassadors. There's Ashley, but then there's also Sarah and Carrie and Mackenzie and Russ Irwin. And who am I forgetting? There are so many Seesaw ambassadors in this district. You have lots of people around who are tapped right into the direct, Brigitte, tapped into the direct pipeline from Seesaw, getting all of the latest information. So ask around, ask your staff. We're all in this together. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll stick around if you have questions, but I'm going to stop recording.